All right, welcome to this week's Explainer. We're going to look past the obvious headlines today and really dig into some of the quiet but honestly profound shifts that are happening in our digital world and the hidden costs they're creating for all of us.
You know, we all think about financial costs, right? But what about this other ledger? This unseen ledger of our digital lives. It's tracking what you're paying in trust, in privacy, and in control. And as we're about to see, those costs, well, they are adding up in ways we're only just beginning to wrap our heads around.
So, let's start with the first and maybe the most important hidden cost, the erosion of trust. We're going to look at how the very systems we use to protect ourselves are actually being turned against us. Okay, so we're all trying to be a little more careful online, right? So you might install a tool like a VPN, thinking you're adding this crucial layer of security between you and, the rest of the internet. And it feels like a really smart, responsible move. But here's the thing. Attackers have totally adapted to our caution. They've started creating these fake VPNs that look and feel just like the real deal. So you willingly install them believing you're protecting yourself, when in reality, you've just tricked yourself into giving them direct access to everything.
This completely flips the whole script on security. It weaponizes our good intentions, turning the very act of trying to be safe into the biggest point of failure. It's kind of wild when you think about it. And look, it's not just malicious tools from hackers. We also have tools built right into our browsers that are supposed to protect us, like the global privacy control. This thing is meant to be a universal opt-out switch that just broadcasts our privacy preferences for us automatically. But here's the kicker. An independent audit found this signal is just frequently ignored. I mean, look at these numbers. Google disregards the request 87% of the time, Meta 69%, Microsoft 50%. This reveals a huge gap between the privacy we're promised and what's actually happening. And this breakdown of trust, it's happening everywhere you look. In healthcare, you've got lawsuits alleging AI recorded doctor visits without full consent. In our own homes, there are free apps that secretly use our internet as part of a proxy network. And at the highest levels, you've got big platforms quietly delaying or even abandoning plans for stronger encryption.
So this erosion of trust, it starts to build into a much larger picture, a new kind of conflict that's happening just out of sight. These aren't just isolated incidents. They're basically skirmishes in a silent digital war. Consider this number, 10 petabytes. That is the insane amount of data a group calling itself Flaming China claims to have stolen from China's National Supercomputing Center. Just to put that in perspective for you, that's thousands of times more data than the entire Library of Congress. And that right there, that illustrates the new reality perfectly. The hack allegedly went on for months, quietly siphoning off data in tiny little increments to avoid getting caught. The goal wasn't some noisy smash and grab. It was a long, silent, and deep extraction of critical intelligence. This exact same quiet approach is now being used to target physical infrastructure. The FBI reported that Iran-linked hackers were targeting U.S. water and energy facilities. They didn't blow anything up. Instead, they took over the programmable logic controllers, basically the digital switches for physical machinery, and caused disruption from thousands of miles away.
So in response to all of these invisible risks, we're starting to see some big geopolitical moves. France, for example, is actively shifting its government computers off of U.S. tech like Windows and Microsoft Teams and moving to open-source alternatives. It's really an attempt to regain control of its digital destiny and make itself less vulnerable to these shadow conflicts.
But perhaps the quietest, and maybe the biggest, change of all is the one happening not in the headlines, but in how we actually work. The most significant invisible shift is happening right at your desk.
So get this, there's a story about one professional in China. She didn't just use AI as a simple tool, she created 6 distinct AI agents to handle different parts of her job. She essentially built herself a synthetic team. And these weren't just simple bots, Each AI had a very specific role. One for research, another for content creation, one for project management. She even had one for personal planning. Together, they functioned like a real team, handling up to 70% of her daily operations. And here's the real twist. The AI didn't just save her time, giving her more free time. It massively raised the ceiling on what one single person could accomplish. She wasn't just more efficient, she was running a much, much bigger operation, all by herself.
For a lot of other people, this means the very nature of their work is changing. There was this economist with a PhD who described how his job was slowly transforming from doing original, deep research to, well, to simply refining the machine's output, basically proofreading AI-generated text and correcting its mistakes.
So, if trust is a target, and conflict has gone subtle, and AI is increasingly doing the actual work, what does that leave for us? I mean, where do we fit in?
Well, the inescapable conclusion seems to be that our value is shifting. We're moving away from doing the work and moving towards directing the work. Away from producing the answer to defining the problem. From executing a task to guiding the process. Our role becomes less about knowing all the information and way more about deciding what good actually looks like.
The ability to think clearly, to ask the right questions, and to provide thoughtful guidance, that is becoming more valuable than the ability to just produce the answer itself. When production is nearly infinite and practically free, direction is what truly, truly matters.
So we'll leave you with a final thought on that. The power is shifting from doing to directing, from execution to deciding what is worth doing in the first place. And in a world of infinite automated answers, the most important question remains a very human one. What will you choose to direct?